$2
But I like the idea.
Go.
We joined in 97. In fact, that was from the budget. And it was a Scottish show. Right up on the west part.
And there's this machine that's a
We're gonna do fades.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, all the same area.
So that's the difference. That's the difference you pay.
Ask the question.
Oh, yeah. You win the box car, go up the stairs, walk across the carpet.
Tell by the decor. No great one.
The ladies' waiting room was on the other side of the telegraph room.
Where the laundry is.
This wicket here, this is where the men purchase their tickets. And in the ladies' waiting room, you'll find another wicket in the door where the ladies purchase their tickets. So you have to step back in time and remember that this station is one of the oldest in Canada. It was built in 1887 by a British company, very appropriate. Designed by Sir Samuel Fleming. And at that time, the big question is, why did they have separate waiting rooms? And people think, well, automatically segregation. But actually it wasn't. Back then you had the men who would have been talking politics, maybe a bit coarser language, spittoons. The ladies didn't do any of that because they were very prim and proper. So they had their own waiting room.
They work the babies and things.
You carried right on. They also nursed, and that was not done in the men's waiting room. So they had their own waiting room. The other thing that we have to remember is that all your abductions took place at the train station in those days. And there were always posters posted in the railway stations telling women that they were only allowed to talk to railway staff.
Excuse me, was that abductions or adoptions?
Turn it up a little bit.
I just wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Basically what it was, and actually before the trains came, those types of things happened at the wars when the ships came in.
Right.
And families would lose their children for no reason, and of course they'd be taken on a ship and gone. But during the railway days, in those early days, the railway staff were trained how to dress a lady properly. And in order for the lady to know who was a gentleman who worked for the railway staff, that railway staff would wear a special lapel pin. And this is how the ladies would tell that this was a trustworthy railway staff that they could talk to, ask for directions, and get advice from.
Too bad Jerry doesn't wear one of those.
That was before the days of VRL. Trustworthy staff.
Stick up for me, Jim.
I don't know this man.
There's nothing you got for sale anywhere you want, is there?
Actually, there is.
We've already started in the negotiation.
All he has to do is deliver it to me and I'll buy it.
The locomotive. Which locomotive are you looking for?
Oh, I've got one in mind. With the building itself, upstairs, some of you are staying upstairs, that's where the station master lived with his family. So the only alterations that we've done to upstairs is adding washrooms. So the bedrooms that you have were bedrooms. You had a parlor, a dining room. The pantry was added on in 1920 because the original pantry was taken for a bathroom because that's when electricity came to our community. The deck out front was put on in 1912, and that was put on for the Bellier family because they had 6 girls. And again, the same type of situation. You have to keep the children away from the general public. You'll see some pictures scattered around the station here where you'll see actually mobs of people waiting to get on the train and off the train here. So it was a very busy location. So there has been a few changes over the years with the building. But the walls here, they're 13 inches thick, they're solid. You'll see some of the photographs in the albums there where the building looks like it's going to fall down, but it wasn't. Structurally, it's sound. The floor's original. The floors are all original upstairs. And basically, we just did some cosmetic stuff, put the finials back on it, replaced the roof and things like that. You might wonder how I got this. I don't know if any of you know the story of how all this transpired, but this is actually my parents' driveway out here. And I grew up beside the station. So this is where I played, and this is where I was kicked out of all the time. And if I was good, those railway engineers would take me up in the engines, and as they shunted the cars around, I'd be in the engine here going up and down the yard. In the summer, they would bring their work cars in and their cook cars. They would be stationed here for maybe 2 weeks to a month, and I'd spend my days in the railway cars, usually with the cook and that. So I guess I developed a fondness for the building. And in 1960, they took the passenger train off. The passenger train going through Tatamagouche was called a jitney. And it was a 2-car train, looked much like that, diesel electric. And after they took it off, I came over here on the platform and asked the station master, Mr. Kenny, if I could buy it. I was only 5. He just laughed. I went home, couldn't understand why, and literally 14 years later I owned the train station.
So, I'm 19 years old.
Actually 18. The station was put up for demolition in 1972. I never dreamt about taking it over myself. Went to the village, asked them to take the station over to prevent it from being torn down. And their comment was, it's a big old building, it would only ever be a tax burden to the community, tear it down. Same year, Trolls Trading Station went up for demolition and was torn down. I went to, didn't I get that right? Yeah. I went to CN in Moncton when the village said no. And I asked them to buy the train station, and they said to me, well, we don't sell train stations to individuals. And this is a bit of a media thing too, right? They were getting hit quite bad for tearing down train stations at the time. So what they said they'd do, they'd lease it to me for 30 days. And if I behaved myself, I could stay for another 30 days. And of course, they assumed 30 days, I'd be gone. That would be the end of it. They could tell the general public they had tried everything, you know, to save the station and so on. Well, 10 years went by.
30, on a 30-day lease.
30 days at a time. Same rent.
Oh my God.
Same rent. And the gentleman at CN in Moncton said, I'm going to retire. And I want you to have a little better hold on this. So I'd like to sell you the building and lease you the land for 30 days. So I entered into a lease for 30 days on the land with the Queen. That's the type of lease it was. It's all very formal. And we had an agreement that we couldn't do anything with the building as long as the train was running, and the train still kept running. So 2 years after that, I kind of gave up hope. Put the station up for tender, hoping the village would buy it and fix it up. And we had 3 tenders, and the 3 tenders were to tear it down. So I was stuck with it. And then 2 years after that, the train stopped running in 1986. That meant I could do whatever I wanted with the building. Bed and breakfast had come into their own. We decided to do a restoration project and open a bed and breakfast with the 3 rooms upstairs. So that's all how this started. So it's I've had the station now for 30-some years.
So you still have a 30-day lease on the land?
No.
Is it up to
We go on a little bit, and when CN decided to sell the land in Nova Scotia, like all the old rail beds, we had an agreement that I would be included in that sale, that it would be, you know, cut out and sold to me separately. And if you want to get into that issue, the sale went through. We were ready to make the sale, had to go through the government fell, we had to wait till that got over with, applied to the new government, and lo and behold, the village decided to step in and say, no, we don't want that sold, we have a claim on that, we would like to purchase it and lease it back to him. So that took another about a year to get through that stage and get those powers out of my hair. So now everything's sort of settled, but it's taken a long time.
So you own the land and the building now?
Yes.
Congratulations.
I'm stubborn, I just keep at it.
After 30 years, I'd say that's called stubborn.
From the end of the last caboose here to about 85 feet beyond the last caboose on this line.
Oh, so you can put a few more in.
Just enough room for a park car.
No, that's going on this line over here.
What car here?
Parker.
What's
Our
that?
back end dome, so. This over here, that's also part of our property, and we can put a siding in there. If we want, we could also put a siding in on the other side of the cabooses as
Couldn't you
well.
do some of those coaches that were in Halifax?
Sure, you should be able to get them one of
They
those
wouldn't sell them to me, I tried for years.
Car car.
They were putting all the hobos up and selling in Halifax in them.
Bob, once we moved your relatives on,
Yeah, but they flagged down in the station there.
Number 4?
No more Keith Slide, Bad Slide?
No, just a regular.
We get into the
No more
cars,
Keiths at all.
Oh, God, these guys.
probably tried for years to purchase cars and just wasn't been able to.
Or Molson's the best.
I discovered the railway
Give me more.
really isn't interested in selling private individual railway cars because of, they have so many requests. This is in CN, I don't know about VIA. And so many people want to buy a car, but they have no idea what they're getting into. So my first 2 cabooses that I purchased privately. And once I purchased them and had them on the property, then CN realized that I was serious about buying railway cars and I had the ability to move them and all that. So in
Safety on the jury.
1993, we bought our first cabooses. We converted them, and we want the whole story, we were 85% complete. Department of Tourism was very happy with us, what we're doing, because it's such a unique property. They okayed all our plans and everything, stamp of approval.
Then the inspectors did.
Then the building inspector.
How long did the permit?
Well, he said, you don't have a building permit, and I said, no, because of course they're not buildings.
No.
You know, why would I apply for a building permit? So, he said they are buildings, and I would need a building permit, but before he could issue a building permit, I would have to make the windows larger. I would have to raise the roofs of the cabooses. I would have to widen the doors. I would have to, put proper steps in, and I'd have to put some type of foundation under them. I said, if I do that, I'll have a building.
he said, that's job security for me.
Catch 22.
So,
I'd obviously heard this story.
he issued a stop work order. And then it sort of all began, because with that stop work order, he actually killed the entire project, not only the cabooses, but the station as well, because we were, as I said, 85% complete. Our money was tied up in the cabooses. Department of Tourism, of course, was quite upset, because they had thought they'd covered all the bases. I sat down and wrote a very common sense letter to the MLAs in the surrounding area, basically telling them that I have railway cars, I don't have buildings, you know, is there anything you can do?
You're on tracks, you're not on tracks. you're
On wheels, on tracks, and mobile. Because we have to move these all the time for maintenance.
Quick disconnect on the sewers.
So what we did, what actually one of the MLAs did, he introduced a private member's bill called the Train Station and Cabooses Act. Once he did that, it was taken completely out of my hands, and it was between the government and the Building Inspectors Association of Nova Scotia municipality. And this battle started in March of '95, and the media just gaffled right onto this.
Oh, yeah.
And they were down here, they came down the road, and they would do all these interviews, and I would be so upset. They'd get in their cars and go up the road, and I said, yes! Another front page story. So So with that, the province really took note of us, like the general public knew about us, because this was in the media. The private members bill was passed in May, received royal assent from the Lieutenant Governor.
Was it unanimous? Or were there some naysayers when the bill was passed?
Yes, they had public hearings, and the Building Inspectors Association of Nova Scotia appeared to do their protest against this, because they felt it wasn't proper.
I love it when the employees try to run the whole thing.
So it was quite
But
something.
it was unanimous in the legislature, the vote, wasn't it?
It was,
Okay,
yes.
that's good,
Yes.
super.
Yes. No, there's no question, but I'm kind of fortunate because I'm one party and my wife's another party.
That was only 2 of 3. Of course, that was before the third.
Probably before there.
Whichever one that is today.
So, I didn't realize when these things happen, your name kind of gets on a list, I guess. So of course, we were invited to the Lieutenant Governor's garden party. So we went down there, thought that was great. But what we didn't realize was that the Queen was coming to Halifax that year. We also were invited down to meet the Queen. So, all from this building inspector.
Bless him.
Well, then I decided to run for county council, so, and I was elected, so now I'm his boss.
You remind him of that every week.
Well, he knows the background with me.
Well, so was it a personal thing with him, or did he have to do that? Was he going by the book?
Yeah, assumably he was just looking at what it was that was there for him to use.
Could he have
All
made
the
a difference?
interpretation.
He was applying the same regulations that apply to her hotel
Yeah.
rooms that everybody has to follow to
That's
this
right.
unique thing, and there isn't
There was
any
no
allowance for unique.
allowance for it to be at that time. I guess for him, he had nothing else to go
That
on.
was the stumbling block right there.
That was it, and
What if you had a train of, what if you had some boats tied up on a wharf and you were renting them out?
Right on, same thing.
What happens then?
but what actually happened, if they had have won, they literally would have had the right to stop every train that came into Colchester County. You know, like,
Had to put a foundation on
what,
it.
the fact that,
Go on anchor.
and by the way, I see him work now, I've watched him work for 3 years, and 99% of the time he's right. The problem is, he follows the book to the letter.
Yeah.
Instead of
And
the spirit.
intent, yeah, the spirit and the intent is the way it was supposed to be meant. I mean, why, the reason that I needed bigger windows was in case of a fire, somebody would crawl out.
Yeah.
But of course, that was put there assuming that there's a bedroom on the second floor with a door opening in a hall. There's 2 outside doors. Who in the right mind would go out the window when you're 2 outside doors?
Unless, of course, you're up there playing cards and set yourself on fire.
But the code doesn't differentiate between a first and second or third floor story window.
No, or outside door.
Or outside door.
Could happen.
The code is very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So we followed the code, but with our act, what it says in our act is that as long as our railway cars are on wheels, on tracks, and mobile, they're railway cars. And
Very important.
he's out of the picture.
So if you want to add boats now, you have to have a real,
You have to have it in the water.
stations, cars and boats.
Throw in some automobiles.
Planes, trains, and
And
automobiles.
actually, we're in the process of amending that act too, because it is, like, it involves the whole province, and they want to broaden the act to include, I don't know what, but it got started back in '95, and now that I've heard that they would like to amend it to make it a bit more broader.
Guess I better not try to lease my motorhome, huh?
I was just thinking about that. If you had a whole series of antique motorhomes or.
How about Sea King
Airstreams.
helicopters?
I mean, true, that's the same thing. about-
What's the difference?
No, they'll be parts, they'll be
Determine
parts.
what
You'll
you're
never
gonna do with a
have
bar
any
that seats
function.
3 people. The official.
Very good, now the questions are coming. I suppose everyone knows it.
I didn't get the question.
Oh,
Repeat
a
question.
caboose and a van. Yeah. We're very,
Same thing?
Perhaps late.
in our business, we call these cabooses, because we're dealing mainly with the general public. To the railway staff, the railway families, and anyone with connection to a railway, they're vans. And that's because we adhere to the British, and in Britain they're called guard vans, we call them vans, Australia they're vans. It's only the US that uses the term caboose.
Never heard of that.
I've never heard of vans.
Van.
Yeah, you never told us that, Jerry.
I'm sure you didn't know it. I have nothing to do with cabooses,
Actually,
that's a piece of
they
freight
use the
equipment.
word that doesn't exist.
That's true.
They use the word cabooses.
Hiring something wasn't a problem.
So they're all,
What's on
they're all
your dream
illegal.
list? If money's not an option, when
The
acquired,
ocean?
it's not a problem. What's on the dream list?
An engine.
A steam one or a coal one?
Actually, see that one up there, it says Via?
It just so happens I have two of them for sale.
You said the legislation addresses cabooses, so how did you get the freight car in there?
It sets a precedent. So
So
I,
it's cabooses and cars, or just the word
That's
cabooses,
what
and then
that's
that
what they're-
extrapolates to other railway
The
cars?
building inspector doesn't know the difference.
yeah,
All you have to be able to show is that that was at one time the last car on a train. And the
No,
last
but
car on a train.
that
was
wouldn't
moved.
apply to his dining car.
no, that's why they're looking at amending it
Okay,
to
so,
cover railway cars.
so we're talking about
It's
cars.
railway
But
car.
it's not just for me, they've had other requests from the province to use railway cars for other
They
things.
may as well do
Like
boats,
diners
they
and
may as
things.
well do
That's because when you have those
buses.
SP9s down here, you're gonna want those included, aren't you?
Yeah, they may as well do buses and things, I had all those things in there.
Salesman here.
You can bring them down when I'm with you.
The dining car is,
6301's got his name on it.
You-
It's got his name on it.
You're gonna bring it down and show it to them, and demonstrate.
that's what I mean, yeah. The dining car that you're going to go in, that's a fascinating story about that one. Built in 1928, built as a colonist car, that was third class, used extensively out of Pier 21 in Halifax, taking, of course, the immigrants across Canada, and also used as a troop car. The seats in the baggage area that you'll notice are the original seats that would fold down into beds. We purchased it out of Winnipeg. It was used in northern Manitoba. And in 1956, it was taken into the shops and converted into half baggage and half passenger. And it was taken up and used for the Inuit up there. So the safety standards on the car, like it had new wheels under it and all that aspect was kept up to date. But the interior was just left original because you'd have like an Eskimo, probably a deer carcass, you might have a coffin in the baggage part of it.
We're having supper there?
Well, I tell you about this room too, if you want to know that aspect.
That was the pissoir.
But that car there, it made it very appealing to me because of the roof line. And if you notice the old pictures of the train station, those are the cars that actually went through Tattenbush,
Yeah.
that type of roof line. There was two of them that went up for sale that time with that roof line. The other one went off to the US. This one here now is the oldest car, the longest serving car to the general public in Canada, 1928 to 1997. So it has a...
Was it built in Canada?
No, it's a Pullman car.
Pullman, that's what the manufacturer Pullman. Do they still have?
I shouldn't say that, I'm pretty sure it is Pullman.
I'll find out.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
So Pullman was built in
Because
Chicago?
Pullman, see, there was Can Car, and Can Car built cars to Pullman standards.
So
And,
there's-
and
you
so
got-
a lot of the cars, like the blue and yellow cars that we had, were built by Can Car in Lachine, Quebec. But
they're
they were
can
built
cars.
to Pullman
Yeah,
standard.
but you don't call them Pullman, you call them
No.
can cars.
No, Pullman were all built in Chicago and, what was the other factory, big Pullman, there was a big Pullman plant in Chicago, and the other one, I can't remember where it was. But they,
What about the cars that were in Montreal Station and the,
which ones?
Well, my name's on one of them too. He doesn't know.
Richard Longtree bought them. You talking about the old business cars that were
Yeah.
converted into geometry cars, they're all.
Geometry cars.
They're all gone.
the three of them?
Geometry cars?
Yeah, they put track test equipment.
Oh, okay.
Each
So those-
superintendent.
So how do you get them here? When you get something in Winnipeg, how do you get it here?
CN brought it to Stellar.
That car was in service when he bought it.
Okay,
He had
well,
been-
what the
what was it, out
crap's
of
gone
service
from
for
here
what,
then?
3 months, 4 months when he bought it?
I don't know if it's that long.
Oh, everything, that car had full functional brakes, it was.
Yeah, but I mean, after the tracks were gone from here, and you were
He
bringing
pulled it into
business here.
Stellarton and then brought it over and landed on Flatbed.
I brought it to Stellarton. I used it in Stellarton for 3 years as an excursion car for nonprofit groups. I just gave the car to them, and the Cape Breton Railway would supply the engine. And they would do runs from Troy to Stellarton, Stellarton to Orangedale, Sydney to Orangedale as fundraisers. We also used it in the movie New Waterfordville.
Okay.
And that was a low-budget Canadian movie. And
Well, it's all Canadian movies.
Yeah, but he had to donate his car.
that's exactly what I had to do. I had to donate the car for the use in the movie, and I mean, it's something to say that it's been in a movie, so I was happy with doing that. But I also said to them that, well, if I donate the car, I said, I want to be in the movie.
Very good.
So they said, well, what would you do? What do you have anything that relates to a railway? I said, well, I have a conductor's uniform. So I was a conductor in the movie.
Oh, wonderful.
You didn't see the Oscar nomination?
No. I actually I got paid as an extra,
Oh, yeah, good.
and
In US dollars or Canadian?
in cash, which really surprised me.
No, we see.
What was it, $6 an hour, and the shoot took 10 hours. That's what
No
they paid
speaking,
for.
Noah.
How much did you get for the rental of the
No, if you
uniform?
speak, you have to get on to the union,
Yeah.
and you have to get paid an awful lot of money. If you have any speaking
I
lessons.
think they said $35 a word.
Yeah,
Something.
something.
So you couldn't say tickets, please.
Give me a sentence, good.
And Mary Walsh, I mean, to watch Mary Walsh perform was,
Yeah, it's worth it all.
I was, because she was like right beside me, because actually I was putting them on the train, and in the movie, if you remember it, she was telling her daughter to get on the train.
Yes, that's right, I remember
And
that.
Get on.
during
$70.
the shoot, it took her probably 3 minutes to say those words, because she was practicing, and there was little kids there, and she was, get on the train, get on the train, get on the train. And then all of a sudden she swore, and as soon as the words came out, she immediately apologized to the little kid, but what she was doing was trying to create the atmosphere for the movie. It was amazing. I could have paid them to be there because it was fantastic to watch.
To see how they.
In that photo album that's going around there, it does have pictures of the movie shoot in it.
Here?
The other car that might be of interest to you, other than the dining, the dining car is about 85 tons in total. It took about a week to move it. We used a 50-ton crane and a 35-ton crane. We took the front of the car and we welded it to a flatbed, and they welded a set of steerable dollies to the back of it. So as the car came down the Sunrise Trail, when they came to a turn, the guy would jump out of the back, pull these wires out, and like a joystick would steer these wheels, so the car could get around the turn.
That's gonna cost you a bloody fortune to move those things.
Yes. The cheapest thing is to buy the car. In doing that also, ATV, of course, did a thing
Like old
on it.
British sports cars.
Live Five.
Buying the car is the cheapest part.
Cheapest
of
thing.
it.
When Live and Five did it, I mean, these things, and I don't know how they traveled, but other TV stations will pick them up for fluff. That move made the national news for CTV. It was also picked up by a TV station in Florida. So the coverage that we get for being so unique is tremendous. The other car that may be of interest is a box car. Who's staying in the box car? Oh,
That's cute.
the first year they built steel box cars was 1937 for CN. Before that, they had, like they're all wooden, and then probably in the 20s they had steel ends and then wooden sides. In 1937, CN put an order in for 3,000 steel box cars. 1,000 were to be built in Trenton here, 1,000 in Montreal, and 1,000 in Hamilton. And
Did you build any of those, Bob?
Don't think so. I wasn't around then.
1937.
that series
Well, if
of
we're born that year,
boxcars, when they got old, they took them into the shop in Point St. Charles, and they made all the cabooses out of them. So the boxcar there, who's staying in the caboose, the steel caboose?
Which one's that?
Any of the steel cabooses except for the transfer van.
You're in the wing one?
That would have been that boxcar originally. Yeah. Yeah, the railway just recycles their cars. So
That I didn't know.
that's why I wanted that boxcar, because it was of that series. After I got it here and I started doing the research, the next thing I was hoping that was built in Trenton, Nova Scotia, well, it was built in Montreal, I discovered it's the last boxcar that exists from that order. So if you're into boxcars, it's a rare one.
Okay, these other bands that you have, the cabooses, the steel ones, Trenton built a whole bunch of them in I think it was probably 68 or 69.
Yes?
Would any of those be from that one?
No, that's a Hawker Siddeley caboose.
Yeah, that's right. Well, oh yeah,
And
is
that
this not?
That's the only caboose that I don't have that CN has built, the only
Okay.
style.
Because we built the frames down here, like the whole exterior, and then they were shipped up to Thunder Bay, finished off up there.
There's one left on the railway, CN has one. Devco, which is of course now been sold, has one left. I don't know, I'd really like to have it, but I sort of can't justify getting the caboose just because it's one I don't have. That seems a little bit far out, you know.
Getting it here is the other thing then too.
Oh, well, I've got that down pat. You
Yeah.
just have to have a friendly
Held up
bank,
for it.
that's all.
How old is that wood caboose we're in right here? The orange one?
The orange one originally built as a boxcar in 1919, converted to a caboose in 1951, I believe.
Do you have little plaques or anything inside that tell the history of that particular car?
I just haven't got around to it. It's all
Because I
in
wouldn't
my
ask the
head.
questions if you
Yeah.
did, I just believe it.
Just let me see, Roche, see, the green cars are oldest, 1911. It's our oldest one.
Who's in the green one? Does anybody remember?
Where?
Yeah, you are, that's
Yeah.
right.
79092, it was built in London, Ontario, converted to a boxcar in 1957, and from original caboose in 1919. I don't know,
Is there anything there in the dining car?
this, yes.
Is there anything in there?
Yep.
Where was it built? Was it actually?
That's my car number, is it?
Your car number is 79092. And that's the important thing about cars. I was in Pubnico today, coming out from Yarmouth. I've been away for a week, so. And I was visiting the party liner down there for CBC Radio, and he was giving me a tour of the community. Laurent, yes. So he was taking me down. He's been there all his life, and he's driving down the road, and I said, "There's a railway car." And he said, "No." He says, "There's no railway cars." And I said, "That's a railway car." He pulls over, I get out, there's 4 tankers, railway tankers, that a fish company has hauled in, probably back in the 40s, off of a train. And here they are. He says, "I've been here all my life and never realized there were railway cars."
And that book has every car.
This book, the qualifications to get in this book, as far as historic cars go, is they have to have the wheels. So there are box cars around, like in Newfoundland, there's hundreds of box cars with no wheels.
They don't
So
count.
they're not in here. That's to qualify that.
So does that include engines?
Is that all the engines in Canada, all Veer cars, everything is listed here. It's updated monthly.
I cut the engine number out of a railway wreck in the 1950s in Stewiacke, Nova Scotia, and I still have it on the wall in my garage.
What's the number? Got the card.
I don't have it.
You gotta have this information with them.
I think we need to call some kind of officialdom on you, maybe somebody from customs.
Exactly.
I gotta get it Yeah, free car.
This is and it's a piece of glass. This
It's a
number
glass.
is a
The
glass.
numbers used to be on the front of the engines on
Were
either
glass.
side, and they were lighted from
You cut that
behind.
off your car too?
And I went up and cut the rubber, got the plate.
Much to his mother's
There was a
chagrin.
Sunbeam Alpine laying in the debris because the train was hauling ball bearings to the Lafarge plant in Brookfield. Big steel ball bearings for crushing stone, and they crushed the Alpine instead.
All right.
So that would probably not be the 50s, that would be the 60s, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be 60.
I think we're late for supper.
Probably.
Where's Shelley? She's gonna be pissed at us because we're late for supper.
No, it won't be so upset with me. The dining car is Canadian, it's built by the National Steel Car Company in Quebec.
Okay.
Which became Can Car in the 60s.
Are they ready to
Are you people ready, or?
If the beer's all gone.
One, we're really anxious to know what that contraption is there.
That board,
With the little jog, jig.
I thought it was a gauge for tracks.
You're right, the width, and you're about the third person in 15 years that has told me what it is.
What thing is
And the one
it?
above it is a gauge for the track.
No,
It isn't?
no,
Should have
that,
stuck on your head.
No, but that's, when you look at that, that looks like the width gauge.
actually what that is at the switch. Your tracks, if they're not held together with spikes,
That's a spreader bar then.
yes. And that's what it is, the hook will go round.
It was right the first time and
Yep.
queued up the second time.
But how many gauges of tracks did we have? That looks like we had 12.
No, what this was used for, the length of it is the distance your rails are apart.
The overall length?
Yeah, above the handhold. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
I'm not that much of a railway buff. Above the handhold is your glass bubble, so you could level them.
Level, yeah.
Oh, we didn't see that, okay.
Okay, that's in the top part.
Oh, okay.
Each notch,
Gives you the,
Oh, for your gauge for going around curves.
going around a turn,
Ah,
one rail has to be higher, so that's
The
your.
grading, the track banking, yeah.
oh, that makes sense.
Super elevation.
And what's the scale then? Is it,
1 inch per foot.
Oh, I'm not sure.
okay.
The thing below it is a journal box opener. That's the
yeah,
little
I
cover
remember
on your
those.
wheels. If you
Yeah,
go
remember that?
outside
You
and
snap it.
Oh, yeah.
look at our older cars, there's a square box over the wheels, so that was to open that box
See
up
if the bearing was
and
off.
to shove a sock in. And this cloth thing is the sock,
Right
and
there,
that
okay.
that would have held your oil.
Wicking.
Wait, of course, your orange lights are the lights off the diesel engine, and there's its operating papers and instructions by the lights. Looks like a chain link above it.
Yeah.
That predates 1900, and that was used to hook between the railway cars. Before now you have knuckles. Well, before the knuckle, you had two hooks.
Two hooks and you drop
That's
that,
it.
drop that.
That-
That's all.
That was it?
That was it.
Wow.
Gravity did it.
Yeah.
What's the circle hook with the two wedges?
This is a safety brake. So when you park your car, this would be used by feed mills and lumber mills and oil companies. When you parked your car by your freight door, you put the brakes on the car, then you go and put those two wedges underneath the wheel. Make sure it wouldn't move.
And here I thought it was to check the diameter or the space between the ears.
Your steel shovel there, that would be your last railway item there. I think your steel shovel, that's a ballast shovel.
Television, country or not? All right, I'll relive.
Underneath the railway ties or sleepers.
So some school of thought today amongst us that was used for chipping ice from switches.
Could be, that one I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know, we saw the question mark and
You must have a broom with the wedge on the other end of it for
Yes.
cleaning the switches and.
There's railway
That's a car
stuff.
mover.
No.
No.
Yes. That is one kind of car.
That one?
At least we used to use them in the shop in Halifax.
Well, that could be.
Just to shove under the wheels, huh?
Yeah, just put it on the wheel.
Your wedge
Yeah,
in the head.
yeah, wedge of the head, okay.
It's not the real one. The real one had a wedge on it that moved at it.
Okay, so that's,
But anything will do.
Yeah, anything will do. You can move it. You can move a rail car.
Yeah. The original clock, is your Bagano clock the original one that was in the
No,
train station?
what they did when they closed the station, they brought a boxcar down, and they took everything out of the station, put it in the boxcar, all went to Montreal, and at that time CN had a shop, an antique shop, and they sold the stuff out of that antique shop. The clocks usually went to retiring employees at the executive level. So, this clock here actually is a commercial clock, very typical of a railway clock, and came out of the Bank of Nova Scotia in Glasgow.
Nice Bagano
So
Canadian clock.
what was the date of the very last people coming here and using this as a station to get on the train? What year is around?
November 1960.
1960.
That's close enough.
That's a pretty close date.
And February '86 was the last time a train went through.
Which is 100 years from the first train? I thought you said 1886 was the first train.
1887, the station was built. That doesn't mean a train went by.
Oh.
the train.
Why would you build a station after before the train?
It all has to do with politics and government
Was
contracts.
this CP
and,
originally?
ICR,
I see.
Intercolonial.
Intercolonial, okay.
The line, the only reference we can look at the line is that the line was opened in 1890. But that's the line.
So the Pictou Lodge was CP though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Mm-hmm.
See,
Atlantic
no,
trunk. It was Atlantic trunk.
no, it would be a CN. No, CN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a
The Lord Nelson is CP.
Lord
CP
Nelson
Hotel.
CP, but I thought Pictou.
The Lodge
the
was
original
was
Pictou Lodge was
originally
CP.
Atlantic trunk.
Oh, I thought it was CP because they are.
They got all the silverware.
Other silverware came out of it was CP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was ICR.
Intercolonial.
What was it,
Railway.
Northern New Brunswick, the INR? That was intercolonial.
Very interesting railway
Because-
question. Once you go in the dining car, on the back wall of the dining car, there's two photographs of the station. One 1894, ICR Tatenbush.
Yeah.
One 1912, IRC.
Okay.
Still Intercolonial Railway, but with ICR, people were getting confused with the Illinois Central Railway.
Okay.
So they changed the initials and then called it the Intercolonial Railway of Canada. And then shortly after that, it became the Canadian Government Railway, which then became CN.
But there's a,
1921,
between Campbellton and Edmonton, New Brunswick, there's the INR, which is intercolonial, I can't remember what the N are, but the N is railroad. And I'm just wondering if that intercolonial obviously then played in a number of railway names.
Oh, yes, yeah, because it went from Nova Scotia to Montreal. So,
It was known as the INR, and it follows what they call the Stuart Highway, which is Highway 17 between Campbellton and Edmonton. And that was known as the INR, and the intercolonial was the I.
Would have just been inter.
No, it was intercolonial. Intercolonial and then N, I can't remember what the.
actually, the railway that laid the rail bed through here was the
make your face?
great American and European Railway Company. And that railway bed was laid in 1894. And it went bankrupt, leaving all these little communities devastated because they owed all the bills. They left people here in the boarding houses with no paychecks and no money and no way for them to get anywhere. And so at that time in the history, it was quite something that happened. And then the Intercolonial Railway came in and took it over, and they laid the tracks and built the station.
Yes.
There's a whole new hobby.
Thank you very much.
After hearing all that.
Cut off his drinks, will you?
Okay.
Just like to say a warm welcome. I just didn't expect to have everybody like this turn up. It was just wonderful to get the reception for this particular run. As you know, we've sort of designated as the Harry Stevens Memorial Run, and the executive's planning to have this every year. So I'm sure Harry would love to have been here tonight.
He is here.
He is here.
You bet.
And would enjoy it immensely, especially all the railway stuff. So, anyway, I'd just like to propose a toast to Harry.
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 I can hear him laughing now.
I can too.
Easy to
Anyway,
imagine.
to Harry. Thank you. Later we'll have a little memorial thing. We can tell our stories about Harry after dinner. We'll tell Harry
Save some
stories.
film for that.
Karen, you're not allowed to tell anything.
I can't.
No.
Oh, yeah, Karen.
Don't let her give away any of the secrets.
So after dinner we'll all be able to tell our little stories.
Did an airplane crash movie?
Oh, the You didn't bring the airplane crash movies.
I didn't know you had a video.
No, we don't.
Player.
I don't think we do. But.
I could sell you each a copy. We watched.
Bring it to White Point.
Did we meet something there?
Just
Well, folks, we're all here for a beautiful weekend. Our last run of the year, the traditional Fall Colors Run, which of course is called this year the Harry Stevens Fall Memorial Colors Run, as it is going to be every year. And we're really delighted to have Karen and Stacy with us tonight. It was nice of them to come on the run. Stacy's first experience.
I'm a virgin to this.
Definitely not be your last. And there's so many people around here that have known Harry much longer than I have. And the short time that I've known Harry, I'll tell you, he was a great guy. I used to drop in quite often to the house because I lived very close by. And I'll never forget, just before the trip to PEI this year and the Gaspé Peninsula, I go up and here's Harry out in the back driveway with the TR4A IRS. I better not forget that. Up on the jacks, and Harry's in underneath.
That's Stacy's car.
And he's doing all the lubrication and the oiling and checking the brakes and doing everything. And he was having trouble with his back then, and he was trying to crawl out from under the car. I said, Harry, let me give you a hand. No, he said, I can get up, it takes a little while. Oh, he said, geez, it's hard. But anyway, nothing would stop him. And as you know, Harry, anything to do with transportation or engines, he was in there. Whether it be car engines, motorcycles, he just rebuilt that beautiful, what was it, a 19...
Francis Burnett.
Francis Burnett, 1947.
It was a very good year.
Any year. He was into planes, as we all know from the video, boats. He could upholster. That Harry, body work, it didn't matter whatever happened. There's a perfect example of body work.
Stacy, don't listen.
That's a work.
But anyway, Harry would have loved being at this place, talking about all these engines and trains.
He is
here.
here.
And all the implements on the wall. He probably could have given us a talk for about an hour and explained everything that was there. And Jimmy would have appreciated learning a lot of things from Harry.
You couldn't have believed a word he said.
But anyway, in tribute to Harry, a great friend who we're never ever going to forget. He'll always be with us on every run, looking down on us, as I'm sure he is this weekend. Anybody here who has a little something to say about Harry, I'm sure some of you can tell some real stories. I mean, there were so many tributes that come through on the emails from people, from our friends in Montreal, from New Brunswick. I mean, it was just incredible. So, who'd like to start off with a little tale about Harry that can sort of relive some of our experiences.
Well, the other problem is that Harry gets in trouble and then I get in trouble. His engine stops and we're on this trip down to southeast Nova Scotia and I drive off the road. And I become the problem.
Yes, and if it wasn't for Preston and myself,
Then I
it'd
do
still
it
be
in the Gaspé. Harry.
Now you did it again now, let me out, let me out.
As I recall, he just gracefully slid into the ditch.
I'm going down here so I can turn around.
So see,
This isn't a funny story, but it illustrates the guy. I have to tell you how we met. And I was trying to figure out when it was. And I had to ask Karen tonight, when their black TR3, which Harry had fixed up for her decades ago, was taken off the road. Because I knew it was before that, and Karen tells me it was like in the early 80s. And so I think at the time, I had already acquired TR2, but it was in storage, and I knew nothing. You know, I knew absolutely nothing about these things at all. But all during the 70s, see, the Sperrys moved from Halifax to Dartmouth in 1970 or 71. And during the 70s, we were getting used to living in Dartmouth. And we were building during the 70s what has now become the club room. It wasn't then, of course. And all during the 70s, I saw this black TR3 running around Dartmouth. And it was at the same time that Sheila and I were thinking, you know, we have all this stuff about kids and work and pressures. We need something that's fun in our lives that isn't demanding. And we had a TR3 when we were first married for a couple of years. So we started thinking we should find another one of these old things. And around 1980 I found the TR2 from Joel Page and brought it back home. And I found the parts car up at Miscou Island off of Shippigan, New Brunswick, and dragged it back home. But I didn't have a garage, didn't have any place to work on it. And then I spotted on Prince Albert. I've always been dragging stuff home. And again, I spotted this black TR3 down on Prince Albert Road. So this time I flagged the car over. And Karen tells me she doesn't remember, so it must have just been Harry. And because I knew it was Harry, I didn't know whether it was the two of them. My memory's not that good. You know what it's like as the cells deteriorate, you know. And I hauled him over the side of the road, and I was all excited. I got one of these things. I got a TR2, and we started babbling on and introduced ourselves to one another and where we lived and what we did and all that sort of stuff. But you know what Harry was saying to me then is the first time I met the guy, he was saying, "Do you need any parts? Do you need any help?" And that demonstrates the quality of the guy from every step thereon, because I needed everything, I knew nothing, I needed help every step of the way, didn't know what I was doing, and this guy from over the other side of the hill was willing to help a guy out who was a novice right from the start.
Was he running the Phoenix station out on Waverly Road at that time?
Oh, I haven't got a clue. I don't think so. I thought
years and years ago.
I thought it was Boland's during that time, but I'm not sure. But
He just had a Phoenix station that Malcolm rented to him
yeah.
to fix cars in.
Yeah, but and I had people giving me cards to go see somebody out on. My TR3 was sitting in the driveway, and people would put stickers in my windshield to go see somebody out on the road.
But if it wasn't for Harry, I would have never accomplished even starting this stuff. And I want you two down here, the camera lady and Karen, to know how much we've appreciated having them around all these years and the help and all.
Thank you, Drew.
Well, I'll go next because.
Stand up and
all
shoot, I
those-
can't see you.
She is standing up.
She is standing up. Drew tells this lovely story about Harry, about how we very much appreciate Harry. However, excuse me, Harry, but you know it yourself, you're a damn liar. Harry seemed to know a lot of things about a lot of things. Yeah. So when I first met him, I would ask him questions, you know, like, how does this work? And Harry would give me an explanation, and I would think, that sounds pretty good. One time, we were talking about weather. I can't remember what the subject was, but we were talking about weather, and it was something to do about wind, and I said to Harry, you know, I've never quite understood. And Harry goes into this long explanation about how, well, you know, and this happens, and such, and it's, you know, this, hey, I understand that. So stupid me, like 6 months later, I'm in, you know, someplace with really intelligent people. And they said, and they started talking about, I don't know, maybe we'd had another hurricane or something, but anyway, the same subject came up. So I, of course, say, oh, I know exactly how that works. This happens, and this happens, and this happens, and meanwhile, these 3 or 4 people, their faces are going, you know, and I'm kind of looking at them thinking, maybe, you know, everything he told me, he made up on the spot. It had nothing to do with reality. And I am explaining this to a room of people who knew better. The next time I saw Harry, I said, Harry, I want you to know this now and remember it forever. I will never believe another word you say, and I never have.
That's the yin and the yang, I think.
How about you? You've got a little story to tell us.
You went to Portland with him.
No, you go to Portland.
Yeah.
No, we went with him. Yeah.
Just, I haven't been in the club a long time, maybe 4 years or so. The first meeting I had, it seemed a lot longer. But I remember the first meeting I had, I was meeting the guys, and there was a trip coming up. And the guys saying, well, are you going on the trip? And people are sort of standing around saying, well, I don't know if I'm going on the trip or not. And I couldn't get any feeling as whether anybody was going on this trip. And it was my first trip, but I was looking forward to it. But they were all standing around kicking tires and saying, well, is Harry going? Because if Harry was going, then it was something different. The risk just wasn't there. Because if it went wrong, Harry could fix it. And I never knew who Harry was at this point, but I knew that he was something that had to be there on a trip. So the first trip I went, Harry was along. In fact, we went out along where I live to Walton, along the Walton shore. And one of the cars broke down. I think one of the MGs broke down. Of course.
Bloody likely.
And we got to the light there at Walton, and they needed some part for this MG. And Harry figured out that, oh, that was a plumbing part. You can probably get it at the hardware store.
Oh, that was Ron's MG.
Where we just had lunch. And I thought, no, that's not going to work. But they went back, and they picked up this part, Harry put it in, and it worked. Phenomenal. So he's
Drove
been,
back to the Emporium and got the card.
Yep, so got it right there.
so somebody here is going to have to step in and fill these shoes, but they're going to be very, very big shoes to fill. Because the trips are going to be quite difficult from here on in, and more risky for all of us. Here, here.
Gerald
I've got a lot of stories to tell about Harry, but one that really sticks out in my mind was a few years back we all decided to go on a tour up the west coast of Newfoundland. And of course everybody was excited and we all took off, and I'll never forget one night we were stopped at this place, and I can't remember the name of the place. It was some little outport. We were in this little flea bag hotel, a whole bunch of us, and Dildo. No.
Rocky Harbor.
Flea bag.
Rocky Harbor. Rocky Harbor.
But, no, it wasn't Rocky
Shallow
Harbor,
Bay.
but wherever we were, Bob Forrest was there from Montreal. And if there was anybody that was any crazier than Harry, it was Bob.
Oh, that's when we were out in St. Anthony.
No, it wasn't. We weren't the St. Anthony. We were on the way up there. Anyway, we were stopped and it was going to rain, so everybody was putting up the hoods on their little cars. And Bob and Harry were there, torturing each other, of course, because Bob had his MGA and Harry had his Triumph. And these two little kids came along, and Bob hauls out this big roll of duct tape. And they looked at it, and they said, "Oh, just duct tape." Bob says, "You know why they call that duct tape?" Harry said, "Let me tell him, let me tell him." He said, "Well, years ago," he said, "in Nova Scotia it was invented." And so what they did was they took this tape, and these kids were like 6 years old, and I'm standing there listening to this, you know, thinking, oh, geez, what's he going to say, you know? And Bob said, "Oh, no, it wasn't Nova Scotia, it was New Brunswick." And then they got in a little argument, the kids were looking at each other. And he said they used to take this tape, and they used to use little tacks, and tack it around the outside of their rowboats. And then very quietly push the rowboats through the ducks on the water, and the duck would stick to the tape. And then they called it duct tape. And they said, and then of course Bob had to jump in and said, "Well, that's almost right, Harry." And they got his, and these two little newfie kids were like, "Why are all these mainlanders that nuts?" It was unbelievable. Now the next story I got to tell is one that happened down in the French Shore a few years ago. We were all down there on one of these little tours. And we went into that beach. What was the name of that beach?
Mavalette.
Mavalette Beach. And so everybody went down and they started walking around on Mavalette Beach. And of course there was a whole bunch of Triumphs and MGs and Austin Healey's. I the only Austin Healey, I think.
One Sunday.
And yes, one Sunbeam and one Morgan. And so Harry's walking along the beach, and he's torturing the hell out of Ron Gray this day for some reason. And he says to Ron, there's an old piece of rope laying on the beach. He goes, "Ron, you want to save that piece of rope?" And so Ron says, "Why?" He says, "Well, we might need that to tow one of those MGs home when we get." So a few minutes later, we go along, we drive along a little further, we pull in for gas, and nobody needed gas, only Harry gets gas. So we're driving along, and all of a sudden, Harry pulls off on the shoulder. We all turn around. Bob Bell turns around and drives directly into the ditch. Stuart comes up and he goes, "Well, that's 2 of the 3 Triumphs down." And by this time we all get turned around, we're all stopped, see what's going on. Preston and I lift Bob's car out of the ditch. Bob there, and Helen's going, "Oh, geez," you know. So we get the car out of the ditch and we go back. And here's Harry bent over. He's got the engine bonnet open on the car. Both carburetors are apart. Big butt cleavage, you know, he's hanging down. We have got 4 or 5 pictures of Harry's ass sticking out.
And there was Harry!
And anyway, so he's in there and he's got his carburetors apart and he's pissed off. Hey, you could tell he was pissed off because they had obviously pumped some bad gas into his car.
Diesel, yeah.
And no, it was gas this time. And of course, Ron couldn't resist it. Ron goes up and he puts his arm around here and he goes, "You want me to go back and get the rope, Harry?" And I won't say what Harry said, but one time I saw him almost lose. He looked around and he was like, he had it coming.
Preston, you have a few words you can probably tell us about Harry.
A few?
A few. Preston has traveled many miles to hear roads with Harry.
I think most of you saw my message I sent out a few nights ago. I recomposed and told some lies about Harry.
Harry would be comfortable with that.
We only met Harry in '96 when we moved back to Canada from the U.S. and we ran into Harry and Karen for the first time. A very short time we realized that Harry brought a couple of things to our lives. Harry brought a lot of joy to us because no matter what Harry was doing or involved in, he always brought a smile to your face. And he did. He lied. Rewrite you. And there were a lot of Harryisms. You know, one of my favorite ones, if I drank Mount Gay rum, I was going to become gay. But Harry was also of the belief that if you contacted somebody that was gay, you were going to become gay. So if that gay person drank Mount Gay rum, we weren't sure what the result was. But Harry could go on and talk about that forever. Harry's technical abilities were just out of this world. And he never ceased to amaze me. I had a problem with the back end of my Jeep, and he came over one day and did some welding for me, and we had to get up inside the frame, and it wasn't an easy job, and Harry did it. I mean, it was just amazing watching him. I remember him in St. Stephen's when you had lighting problems on your car, Robert, and Harry got into the wiring, and this went back to bare basics, and he just watched him as he took the basic lighting theory, the basic concept of wiring in an automobile, and worked his way and found out what the problem was in his lights. And I thought that was just amazing. And he did it with all of us around ridiculing him. I mean, that's it. Harry was Harry, and that's the way it was. Harry was always just in time. And I remember we were going on a run, and I can't remember where it was, but one of our week-long trips, and Betty Ann and I were over visiting Harry and Karen. And we go up and knock on the door, where's Harry? He's underneath the Jag. And we go around the front of the Jag. He's rebuilding the front end of the Jag, not the sheet metal, not the front end, the sheet metal. He's got sheet metal that he's bending, because he was a metal pounder, he could bend it to shape. He was putting it in with rivets, and then he was starting the process of doing tack welding and starting the process of grinding it down. And this was 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. We're leaving next morning. Harry's got the front end of this car. I mean, it's absolutely ugly. That evening, he finished the job, painted it, and comes screaming out next morning, I mean, just in time to leave, and the car looks beautiful. And that's Harry. I mean, that's the way Harry did things. He knew how to do it, he knew what his constraints were, and as long as Mummy was good to him, fed him, got his drinks, looked after him, babied him, Harry could produce.
I remember something else about that. The next day, we were down there, and Harry, we started that little trip, and Harry got out, and he was up with his fingers rubbing the front of the car where the paint was. And I said, what are you doing? Harry said, Jesus, I hope there's no bugs today. He said, why? He said, that paint's not dry yet. The paint's not dry yet.
As you know, for a while I used to write articles about various trips.
Yeah.
And there was always something to do, because all I had to do was follow Harry. There was a story in Harry in everything he did, and he's just one of those people that did things that were different from what the norm would be. And he brought a smile to your face, and you can't believe how important that is to many of us. And many of us sitting here tonight got that smile from Harry when days when we were down low for whatever reason, and Harry did a good job of it. And I don't even think he was aware he was doing it sometimes, but he did keep us happy. So Harry, wherever you are, as I said in my message, I hope St. Peter had a canary yellow TR waiting for you, and a box of tools. And maybe you should have one of those MGB tow ropes, Harry.
I heard that Harry let women under the covers with him too.
Oh, yes.
I heard about that.
Really? That's
Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
I wasn't there, but Sandra was.
and Sandra and Pat.
Sandra.
And Pat, yeah.
Sandra, Pat, who else was there? There was someone else.
You were there.
No, I was there, but I didn't go in the room with you.
Does Karen know
bragging
about
about his
this?
body.
And about,
I was after it. Yeah, we found out that Harry didn't wear underwear today.
Something about pineapples.
I never heard a man scream that
That's what
loud.
Jerry's like.
I never heard a man scream like that in my life.
I think Pat and Sandra.
yeah, we had the, we were down in the cover off.
Come on, stand up, Sandra, tell us.
Well, he was always bragging about how good he was with women and how many times he did it every
You don't want to. Turn off the camera. Turn off the camera.
And so I worked with Harry and he would tell these stories at work. So we got up there and Karen called us and we went running over and Pat and I were trying to pull the covers off him and he was screaming and hanging on to the covers. And I looked down and there was underwear on the floor and I was like, oh!
The little bugger's naked in there. You know, Harry never got over that myth in his own mind.
Because he thought that I was going to go back to work and tell the story about what he was really like. But the other thing too is he used to brag about how good he was with women. So we had a problem with the lights in the ladies' washroom, and you get in there and you get in the cubicle and the lights would go off. So Harry was head of maintenance for Boland, so I called him up and I said, Harry, I've got this real problem. He said, what's that? I said, you got to help me. I said, every time I go to the washroom, I get in there, I said, the lights go off. I said, I can't see to get my pants down. I think you can come in and help me. He didn't come in, Karen.
But you find a light bulb on Harry's desk, eh? You know, last year when we had the Quimple cruise and we all went there, Harry took the old Jag, the old black Jag there, and it was so funny. Harry wasn't feeling well then, and when the prizes were coming out, Harry won the prize for the ladies' choice. Okay? And when Harry went up, and what was the guy's name at
Frank Cameron.
Frank Cameron. Frank Cameron gave Harry the prize. And although nobody else heard it, I was there, so I heard Harry said, he says, what's this prize for? And Frank says, it's ladies' choice. He goes, oh, I wish my card won something.
Oh, God.
Somebody's got to tell the bathing suit story.
Oh my God.
Somebody's got to tell the
Bob, you tell the bathing suit story. You were there.
Oh, it's Shelburne.
I think
Yeah,
Gabby and Ian could probably
Oh, that was funny.
went around the South Shore, that trip for the summer. We went in every little out port and back port. And anyway, we ended up, that wasn't in Yarmouth.
Loyalist Inn.
Yeah, that's right. And they had a swimming pool out front. Well, Harry comes out in the skimpiest bathing suit I've ever seen.
From high school.
It was a Speedo bathing suit that was not made for Harry.
No, that's not true. He said that was his bathing suit in grade 10.
You know the picture of the guy that they have on TV that's walking across the parking lot carrying a surfing board?
Yeah.
With his gut that goes down,
Yeah.
hides the bathing suit and it's bouncing off his knees. That's exactly what Harry looked like.
Bob, tell the story about the Mountain Gap Inn. Remember we stayed there? Oh, my and God. Karen?
That was you and
And you
Karen.
and
That wasn't
Karen?
Harry. Where was Harry that
He
night?
was drinking the blueberry wine. And you guys, you snuck into that man's cabin.
Oh, we went into the
And you thought it was Sheila and Drew and Jerry and I.
No.
You said, come on, you bastards, get up. Don't get up.
I thought Pat and him were in bed together. I was in the wrong cabin.
You and somebody else.
It was just me. Yeah, dang it. No, I didn't knock, I just walked in.
There's another story about Harry. You probably remember that because you were part of the group. we were up in Parisboro, and we were in your cabin, which happened to be the party room, and we had the women all out in the living room bedroom, and we were all up in the kitchen, the men, and we were into the rum, and
all getting queer.
All getting queer. We were getting queer. Way too much monkey rum, and I'll never forget this. Most of us were pretty hammered, but Harry was in the corner. And I can't do it because I'll kill myself. He was like this in the corner, drinking. And then all of a sudden, we start to slip down the wall. His glass in his hand, and he ended up flattening his butt on the floor. He had just had enough. And we all stood around. We never missed the drink, I'll tell you. Harry was in the corner, sitting there, being propped up by the corner, and we were just kept on drinking and telling our stories.
They just slithered.
It was one classic. You've seen it in the comics, but Harry did it.
I've got another one. Years ago, and I mean this was probably what, 8, 9 years ago, 10 years ago. We went on a run down the Eastern Shore. And Harry had the old 420 Jag, the old blue one. And that thing, he had the carburetors were all screwed up in it. And yeah, black smoke was pouring out of it. Sandra and I were behind him in our little Austin Hilly convertible. Well, by the time at the end we went back to Rogers for a barbecue. And by the time we got back, our heads were just pounding from sucking back all this smoke, eh? So we're all sitting in there, and everybody's having a few drinks and barbecuing and everything, and somehow or other they got onto the topic of what kind of fuel should you burn in your British car. And so everybody was going on, well, I burn high test, and Bob, well, I put this lead additive in there, and I do this, and I do that. And it was going on, and Harry says, well, myself, he says, I always use nothing, I use nothing but high test. He said, I wouldn't use anything but high test. I said, enough's enough. And I said, Harry, I think you're burning goddamn coal in that chip box. You know? He never spoke to me for weeks. Oh, man, that thing smoked.
That was one of those lies he told.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I used to tell everybody that he got all the neighbors to give them their old lawnmower fuel and stuff in the spring and pour it in the car. That's why his car smoked.
What trip did he go on that he had that Jag? He was doing the bearings the night before.
Yeah.
Remember that? He had all.
Well, that was, we went to South Shore on Yarmouth.
Was that the same trip? I'm not sure, but anyway, the night before we're going, he had the fan off. He changed all the bearings in the bottom end of that engine the night before he left, and then took off.
Next morning he took off.
I mean, that was incredible.
And I remember I said, how did you get back together so quick? He said, that silicone is great stuff.
What did you say?
What?
What did you say?
I said I helped. I told Janet I helped him with all that. Are you coming in yet?
Get your nominees I want to tell another story about Harry again, and I told it in the message. I said about Harry and his make and break engines.
Oh, God.
And Harry, I'll never forget, the first time I went over to Harry's, he had a make and break engine that he found on the beach somewhere, soaking in a bucket of kerosene or a tub of kerosene, and eventually that engine worked. I mean, he put it back together, and after it soaked for 3 or 4 years. But when we were up in Newfoundland a couple of years ago, we were so fortunate in that we took off with Harry and Karen and Betty Ann and myself, and we did the eastern part of the province. And in the process, we ran into a fisherman's museum, and I think it was probably up in Bay Barrett. And we walked in there, and they had every size and model of make and break engine that you can imagine. And Harry just was in heaven. I mean, and he talked to a guy who ran a lot of these engines, an old fisherman, and we couldn't get him out of there. I mean, the look on his face was euphoria. I mean, absolutely euphoria. And I've never seen a person so happy to see something like a bloody old engine. But Harry, that was his life. And it really taught me a lot about that man, because just how he could get such joy out of something mechanical.
Well, it was the same way in the Acadian Peninsula trip, when New Brunswick, when that guy flagged us down and then took us to the museum that had all the models and the make and breaks all on the lawn and that sort of stuff. Harry was, you know, he was just beside himself. You know, we could have stayed there for 2 days.
Or the day we were up in Saulnieville, and oh my God, I don't know. We drove back these old dirt roads. Harry had this vague idea that somebody had told him sometime, somewhere, that back there, somewhere, there was a big field with dead engines in it. And he knew he could find them. If only he could find them, you know, it's the mother lode of engines.
Give it mouth to mouth.
Oh, we drove over dirt road after dirt road.
Never did find
We never did find them, no.
Gotta tell another story. Betty had this reminded me of it. When we did the St. Stephen's trip, and we went up to Minister's Island. And Minister's Island is a wonderful thing. You have to go across the causeway to get out there, and it's only available at low tide and what have you. Anyway, we got out there, and we're poking around all these old buildings. And there's a low turret building that turned out to be the old pump house. And we opened the door, creak, 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 creak sort of thing. We go inside, and there's the old mechanical pump there with the old engine, and it hasn't moved in years. And Harry, of course, Robert Bell, yeah. Harry, of course, had to look at this thing. But we were also fighting the battle that we had to worry about the tide coming back in, or we weren't going back home. And Harry just wouldn't leave.
Which 12 hours?
Yeah. Harry wouldn't leave, and we locked him in this building. And then we continued on the tour. And it was the longest while before Harry realized that he was locked in, because we went back a couple hours later and finally found Harry. I mean, he didn't know that we had left. He didn't know we had locked him in. He was in love with his engine.
We're going to wait to start it. He thought he might pee in it, it was start.
But he was an absolute genius. I remember the night he told us how he used the knitting technique to repair cracked blocks. And this was for the big marine diesels and what have you. And he was one of the only mechanics, if not the only mechanic in Canada, that had been trained by the Brits to use this technique to knit pieces of the block back together. And I remember he just totally, stitching, yeah, it totally intrigued me that night when he sat there and he went through the process. And he wasn't lying.
I've worked in the engine industry all my life, and I got some news for you. All bullshit. and you swallowed it.
Not that
Harry
case.
stories.
Yeah, but only Harry could beat that story.
Yeah. He
The
could
duct
make
tape.
you believe it.
Oh, the duct tape. Oh,
The duct tape was good.
I just see those poor ducks stuck to that tape.
That's why they call that a shot.
Piece of duct tape.
Well, remember the time we were coming back from, I guess it was our Acadian tour, and it was night, and we stopped at, where else? Timmy's in Miramichi. And we all had our coffee and our pee break and the whole deal.
Some of you did, I broke a manifold.
Yes, that's true. And we all were standing around in the parking lot, getting ready to get back in the cars, and we looked up, and it was this gorgeous full moon with a corona around it. And of course, we all commented, look at that beautiful moon. Look at the corona. And very quietly, Harry says, anybody that can see that ring around it is gay, you know.
He had a phobia about gay people.
My introduction to that,
Oh, yeah.
We gotta watch Ricochet's going down the road.
And
Yes.
I think one of my early trips was going on a trip with you up to the valley, and there was an eat-out place somewhere around Dalhousie or East Dalhousie or someplace in the valley. And I didn't know any of you guys, so I was sort of off by myself. And this goddamn great man, Labrador
Oh, no, that was
dog,
a Leoman.
tried to lick me.
Leonberger.
Yeah, that was like
Big
you.
Leonberger. Dog about the size of a horse.
Well, I was a bigger horse. So,
Priceless picture of you.
for 2 years, Hal wouldn't go with me on these trips because I guess after I came back, it wasn't very exciting. But then we gravitated to Drew's house for some kind of meeting. It was probably the annual meeting, but if my memory serves me correctly, it was a review of a trip to Stowe.
Oh, yeah.
And they were putting up slides about, and it was Karen having so bloody much fun. I don't know about the rest of them, but that was my memory. It was her face and the silly antics. And I said, well, this is a great group.
Wasn't that the time Harry made Karen dress up like the French upstairs maid?
Yeah, I remember
That was after
And he had the Boy Scout hat on?
That was after
Lord
he came back from
Baden-Powell.
Stowe.
Stacy, don't record
This
this.
was in something
Yeah,
you
held
shut it
out
off
on
for a minute.
Digby. And you already gone to see Bob Forrest and his locomotives, his miniature locomotives, steam locomotives, which are, I have many interests, like Harry did. It's miniature railway, major railway, antique cars, British cars. But it was Karen and her laughing and the hugging and the...
Don't get dirty now, Bob.
No, it was a very small kitchen or something, and they were making do with the very basics. I guess it must have been in Digby or someplace. And I said, well, this is such a basic and things that appealed to me. And after about 2 more years, Helen started coming with me. After I had to buy 3 other cars, I cut her off. She wouldn't drive with me in the TR3 because it was too close to the ground. And it was too windy. So we bought the TR4. But after a while, I got to know Harry. And
Maybe it was after Helen got to know Harry that she started to come with him.
well, maybe that was...
Yeah.
I think it's the comradeship that Karen and Harry made about this and made this association so attractive to me.
Yep.
And it was not just Harry, it's Karen and Harry.
Yeah. Karen, can you tell us about Harry's vocabulary, some of the words he created?
I thought Sheila was doing a dictionary on that.
I know he had his own
He
vocabulary.
had his own words.
Yes.
And his own spellings. And I'm trying to think right offhand. Oh, one night on our way up to Sunnyside, this was just maybe this year sometime. There was a car in front of us, I think it was a Toyota. And he said, those Toyotas haven't changed much over the years, have they? And I said, no, I guess you're right. I just agreed with him mostly about everything. It was easier. And he said, just look at that Canary there. It's the same as it always was, and it was a Camry. And then we were in the valley there, can't think of the name of the place now, where the fort is, Fort Ann is.
Annapolis Royal, yeah.
And remember, we were at an outside restaurant, and when we got up to leave, he said to, I don't know, it might have been said to Robert Bell, let's get one of those ricochets and we'll go for a ride. And it was a rickshaw. Something like that. And then he spoke about the House of Ill Repute on Sackville Street.
Yeah.
When we were in Digby area.
Yeah.
That might have been around the same time. And he said the girls would be in the window, and he had often gone by those broccoli houses. So we called them broccoli houses.
Broccoli house, yeah.
So, but he probably had more that I can't think of right now. I don't know.
Remember the first time we went to Bear River, and we went to that gentleman's house that was up on the hill?
Oh,
And he was building a boat in his barn.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Yes, and that was the first time I'd ever seen Harry and the Harry and Robert Bell act. This guy had a make and break engine.
Or 10.
And I thought they were going to trip each other trying to figure out how they were going to get these make and break engines back to Halifax.
The guy that had the barn that he lived in.
Yeah, these great huge monstrosity of engines that, unless you had a boat, I don't know what the hell you were going to do with it. And it was all rusty and messy and, oh, I like this one and oh, I thought, I'll have this one. And before we left that barn, they each bought one. Did they go? You know, now, we all shop when we go, but usually we buy trinkets. You know, we don't buy engines. But Harry Stevens and Robert Bell, you never can be quite sure what they would come home with, you know. It
A
could
charm
be,
for your bracelet.
yes.
3,000 pounds.
You're talking about Harryisms.
You have some?
Oh, I got one. It's kind of classic. We were waiting in line for a ferry, I think, to Deer Island. It was on the
Was that the
Campbell.
gay ferry?
No, it wasn't the gay. Yeah, maybe it was the gay. Anyway, we were in line waiting for this, and there was a Subaru in front of us from the States or something. And a young couple in it. You know, we were sitting there waiting in line, and all of a sudden we didn't see any heads in this car. I mean, it was all below window level of what was going on. And Harry says, I think that's a Screwbaroo.
I think he calls that all the time. So I never thought about that
I just want to say one quick little thing about Harry and Karen. Ian and I have been members of the club probably 10 years or more now. And we don't get on a lot of drives. But whenever we do, there's always Karen and Harry. And they always offer a place to stay or a meal, or they're always the first to offer. And Harry's always the first one to pull out candy out of his pocket. We just always have to have candy everywhere. And we'll just miss Harry, and I just want to say how much we appreciate everything, how much we love you, and how much we care for Harry.
I moved down here with my other McDonald.
Cousin McDonald.
I guess I'll have to thank Bob for all of this, for the start, and Roger for the second part. Somehow, and Bob and I can't figure it out, maybe Bob's forgotten or something, how we've met. Faithfully typed, as anybody, I still have the typewritten letters at home. Bob would send me about this British club news, you know, letters and stuff. And finally, I think he called and said, listen, the Moosehead Grand Prix is coming up, he said, and we're going to turn around and take some cars down. Would you like to come up there, Ian McDonald? And I said, okay, that sounds exciting. Race cars, oh yeah, you get to see the race cars and everything. So up I come with the MJ. So this is the first time I meet everybody. And there I go through everybody, and some familiar faces here again tonight. And I meet Harry. And we just, I don't know, we just seemed to click or something. And I found out that not only British cars, I love making brakes. He has models, you know, I used to love models and stuff like that. It's just so great and everything. So went through that. The next year, back up I go to the concourse and the Moosehead Grand Prix. There's Harry again and everyone else and all these British cars and stuff. And I brought my pictures from those first, so I can't remember, that's how long ago it's been. So I brought the pictures. So then I turn around and I think and I can't remember, well, the first time Scott Manor House was, I think, something to do with Roger Finney, I think. Yes?
Well, I was there.
He was there. But
Barbecue Roger, yeah.
we ended up turning around and there was Harry again, and we end up at Rogers. And there's Harry barbecuing. And of course, for some reason, I don't know why, I go over and say, do you need any help? And thank you, everyone. That's how I got to know Harry. And at the same time, we used to be, of course, with an MG, you can't get everybody in the car. So when we used to come, it used to be a two-car family. Deb used to bring the support group up in the family car, and I used to bring the MG with one daughter, usually Jessica. So I was there talking to Harry and stuff, and then Harry says, oh, you've got your wife up and your children? Oh, and he talked to the girls and stuff. Oh, you got to beat Mama. And I go, for a fleeting second, I said, well, okay, if this dear man has brought his mother with him, for a fleeting second.
Mummy's here.
Mummy's here. I said, okay, good. So he gathered us all up, brought us over to meet Karen.
Mummy.
Mummy, yeah.
And ever since then, the two families have always been sorted together, I guess. And we thank you very much for being with us. Greatly appreciate it and all the things you've always done for us. And I just always remember Harry being there with our girls, always being so kind, like you've always said, and reaching down in that picnic basket or that container or that refrigerator. Would you girls like a can of pop? Diet Pepsi?
Yeah.
Dash on cake? I could never figure out how come this man would have an entire package, considering he always knew that we were coming along with the girls. He'd always have this full container, no more than any one person could eat. But I figured out after a while. He always took an interest in the girls, and I'm sure in all the families and stuff. So.
Do you remember the night you and I slept with Harry?
Yes.
Camera off.
Four of us slept together in one room.
In one room.
Harry snored all bloody night.
We went to Parsbro to the boat,
Yeah.
and we decided we had become such good friends at that time. Somebody in the back of the room turns around and says, well, why don't we just get the big cabin together? So, and that's where the time where Harry slid down the wall.
Yeah, but Harry gets up in his underwear all night long, walks
And while you guys are up enjoying yourselves on the top of the deck of the ship of the Parsbro at the theater, Harry and I, and Preston?
Nope, I haven't made that theater.
And Bob, sorry Bob. The three of us are downstairs looking at the engine.
I think we're the only ones that have seen the engine of the...
I think so. Well, actually, you've got pictures.
It's a wonder he didn't get on in the ferry to Portland and want to run the ship that
Could be.
It was too rough for him.
Oh, yeah, you
I got a
was sick
picture
that
of
night,
him.
yeah.
So I'd like to say thank you to all the Battens members, and I'd like to thank Karen and Stacy for coming, and thank you very much for being our friends. Thank you.
I guess one of the important questions is who's going to assume Harry's cooking duties?
Ian.
Who can wear that apron and hat?
Who can wear the shorts?
Sure about the apron.
Maybe the apron, I don't know about the shorts.
Oh, you gotta have to.
Can I have the hat and the
You
shorts?
don't have,
These not-
you don't have those, no, but he started me with the socks. All right, so I started with the socks.
God.
Oh, she's got pipes.
Oh.
All right, let's
one,
ask this
Stacy?
question. Who was Harry's assistant at Dave and Nancy Fleming's place for the barbecue?
Thank you.
Shall I say more?
You stand up there, accept the throne of the barbecuism.
We have pictures.
Oh, mommy, aren't they nice?
Oh, there's money. There, she gets the pictures out of all the bad stuff that we had. And down at Malcolm's is Harry and I were barbecuing. And there's, she's got a picture of Harry in the
Thanks, sweetie.
apron.
Chef's hat
Oh, yes,
and the
please.
apron.
And everything. And there I am in the background at the barbecue.
Thank you
So,
very much.
This is Harry's food.
Yes, all pictures. Oh, she wants me to get pictures.
You got the keys to his car?
I hope so.
Yeah, go get this picture.
Remember we went on that car run and that was one of the things we had to have.
The first time we met Harry was at their house, at Bill's house.
Mommy always carry the box of liquor machine.
I thought he was the gardener.
Almost down.
Yeah, he was there and the cook there, he was on the barbecue. Yeah. But he looked like the gardener.
Thank Harry.
Usually the gardener, they have to
Yes,
do
yes,
some
he
other
always
duties.
will.
The priest at the
So was Harry in on the founding of Batten's, Bob? When did Harry come on board?
First time somebody needed a car fixed.
No, you tried to keep me away.
No, I didn't.
I can't remember, you know, he's always,
Harry, can you remember?
as far as I can remember, he's always
When
been there.
Harry first came on board?
Maybe 92 or something like that, because I just remember 93 we went to Stowe and,
93 is the first time that I got real, pictures of
yeah, real
Harry.
pictures.
Real pictures.
Well, that was.
Evidence.
That was the trip that I remember.
But
That
we
was our
were
first.
before that, because
That-
I remember we didn't go to Stowe, and we knew Harry before that. So it was, it must have been about.
Well, the Stowe trip was our first overnight trip we ever made.
Yeah.
That was in, that's
First
one.
long trip.
Long trip, yeah. I don't think we ever did a one night overnighter before that.
No, I don't
Okay, that was our first as a group.
Well, that was the trip that Drew lost his wheels.
Oh,
Yeah.
One wheel.
I have a video of that.
I joined that club last year.
Yep.
You're the current president.
That's right.
Where's the box? I have to have another one in honor of Harry. I had forgotten about these years ago and that Harry introduced me to them again, so thank you.
From that pre-show. Well, I mean, it's a 10-year-old.
When they had the grand, I never went to any of those concourse. That's on Dilly Road, that's Alan Gosling's car.
And these are the
So
original.
Samoosh I have the pictures of Samoosh at Grand Prix, so.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Who drew the cover on that? Jessica?
Jessica made it when she was 10 years old. She made a calendar for you. She liked cars back then.
Yeah.
But they're the original
Can't
pictures from
remember
our
them.
first event with Batan's, which was the Moose Grand Prix.
Rogers rolls.
So, but there's cars there that we don't know, and it'll be interesting to see who's there.
Yeah, it was Halifax.
Dave didn't know anything.
I couldn't find it.
Oh, that was that guy.
We had started doing trips and stuff
That was Kurt.
by '88 for sure,
No, it was,
because
so I just thought I'd.
Use it up.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I do. But I didn't think I would. I was drunk. You're not. No. What are you, Gerald? Damn, look at that single cylinder brake system on that.
Good morning, everyone. Where's Mama?
Probably they might.
Does he have the keys?
Trying to see where the numbers were. Well, that's a dining car there.
Yeah.
And she said 7, didn't she?
Yep.
Yeah. We'll be back someday then. I haven't got much money. Well, I say that, but I don't intend to. Yeah, I'm on.
Weird.
Behind your foot. Oh, you just stepped on.